Mark Carney has absolutely no intention of reconciling with Alberta. He claims he's an Alberta boy. He says he grew up here playing pond hockey or something on the mean streets of Edmonton. But he has singled out our premier for disdain, and he shouldn't, because he should have followed her path in trying to make inroads with the Trump administration instead of just running his mouth and then finding out the hard way that that's how you get 25% tariffs on your stuff, whereas we have escaped with 10% on oil and gas here. Let's listen to what he has to say.
We are fighting the Americans. We are fighting the Americans everywhere they understand. We're fighting the Americans in the pocketbook. We have retaliatory tariffs on them. We just hit them again in the auto sector. We're fighting them on Fox News, which is what they understand.
No, you're not.
We're sending Doug Ford onto Fox News
what they understand.
to show them that we're not messing around up here. And we're going to send Danielle next. Maybe we won't send Danielle. Maybe we'll send Danielle. No, maybe we won't. We won't send Danielle. We're going to keep her. No, keep her. No, it's a bad idea. Forget. Strike that. Strike that. Just ignore that back there.
Wow. The internet is forever, Mark Carney.
Yeah. You know what? If I were a feminist, and the Liberals keep telling me they are, they should be applauding Danielle Smith's advocacy for her province and being the only successful advocate for any sector of the Canadian economy when going up against the Trump tariffs. Instead, they're attacking her, saying, "Oh, we're going to send Doug Ford on Fox News because that's the only thing they understand." Okay, so now you're attacking Fox News, and you are saying that Americans, they couldn't possibly understand anything from anybody else. However, it's nice to see that they are actually deciding that it is kind of smart to go on Fox News because that's the outlet that the Trump administration listens to, or at least watches. But we're not going to, no, let's strike that. That's a bad idea. Why? We only got 10% tariffs. And she continues to go down there and make the case. So maybe if you guys had done that to start with, but I mean, attacking Danielle Smith for what? Doing something and achieving something, and then making her the butt of a joke. The feminists and the Liberals, I mean, if that had been somebody saying that about Chrystia Freeland, of course, there would be like oh my God, look at him, he hates women. Mark Carney might, I don't know, but he sure indicates that he hates Alberta. And as an Albertan, I watched that with a real understanding of what's going to come our way if Mark Carney gets elected, because he's actually more open and upfront about his dislike for Danielle Smith than Trudeau ever was.
Well, and the divide is very clear that Mark Carney is not going to be taking any action or doing anything to unite the country, because if that's the way that he talks about Premier Smith, then that is just a key indication that Mark Carney is going to further segregate and divide this country. As he, makes these ridiculous social media posts like, we need a strong state broadcaster. I will pour more money into the CBC because they're a unifying force of our national identity, or, something along those lines he posts about. And then he goes and he slams a premier who has been really leading the charge in trying to negotiate and work out a fair deal with the Trump administration on the tariff issue. And this is clearly an indication of where Mark Carney will take the country if he's elected. It'll be more division, more ridiculous rhetoric, and fighting for his own personal interests instead of the interests of all Canadians, not just the Liberal few and the ivory tower dwellers.
Yeah, I mean, even the language that he's using, we're going to fight the Americans. We're going to fight the Americans here. And we're going to take the fight. How about we're going to work with the Americans to get this stuff fixed? Like, that should be where we're at. We're going to work with the Americans to repair the damage that we've done to the greatest trading alliance that has ever existed in the history of humankind. Like, that's what the Liberals have successfully done. They have undone the single largest strategic trading and cultural partnership in the history of humanity. That's what the Trudeau Liberals with Carney whispering in their ears. That's what they've done. And no one's talking about fixing it. We're going to work with the Americans. No, it's all elbows up. We're going to fight with them. The only
Yeah.
people who pay at the end of the day are Canadians.
And Americans. I mean, truth be
Yeah, of
told,
course.
it will be the middle class on both sides. But fighting the Americans, we're bringing a knife to a gunfight. We don't have any ammunition to fight the Americans with. They have the leverage. I mean, we have the oil and gas, but we don't have the refineries to refine that oil and gas. It again is this mutual partnership that we have with our closest neighbor and ally. And we don't have military capacity. We don't have the GDP to match theirs. I mean, if we're fighting the Americans, what in the heck are we fighting them with? Because really, they outpower us in every single instance.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sometimes it just shows like a strong misunderstanding of the oil and gas sector. Like our customers already have their own refineries. They don't want to buy a refined product. A refined product is actually a lot more dangerous to transport. Like it's nonsensical. And also think about Mark Carney has the no more pipelines law, the no more tankers law, the gender-based analysis plus shoehorned into approvals projects. So even if we wanted to do more refining at home, no foreign investor is going to look at Canada and say,
no,
with that regulatory regime, no thanks, we're building in West Texas, or we're going to build in North Dakota, which shares an oil field with Saskatchewan. But you'll see there's a lot more activity happening in North Dakota than there is in Saskatchewan. And you can thank the Liberals for that, not Scott Moe, because you got to deal with these federal regulatory processes. We've got a chat we need to get to also, and an ad read. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to throw to
please.
Doug Ford quickly, because he references that let's send Ford on Fox News as though and I have to laugh because it's almost as though, Doug Ford is the guy that's taking on the fight, and the Premier of Ontario couldn't be any weaker. I mean, he's known as Flip Flop Ford because he never knows whether he's coming or going.
Yeah.
And now he's made this ridiculous announcement, in my opinion, and I'll say why here in a minute, to help workers and businesses weather the storm and keep people on the job. We're providing $11 billion in urgent relief and support. And this is so, to protect the auto industry and the workers, and all of that stuff is terrible. And don't get me wrong, there are people who are really terrified of where their next paycheck's going to come from. But this all could have been avoided. And you have Ford hitting back with this aggressive language, like we're going to cut off electricity to middle class Americans and we'll make them suffer. When he could literally just say, let's go to the table. Let's talk about these tariffs. Let's negotiate a better deal. He was on what was it? CHTV, I think it was last week. Really great clip there. I think it was about 11 minutes, where Ford is really pushed back on. And he makes it very clear that he has not tried to negotiate. He hasn't tried to bring in the pre-existing tariffs and taking those down a notch or removing those, because I think if he did do that, if he took off the tariffs that already existed or agreed to negotiate them, then we would have some wiggle room with President Trump on these other tariffs and this escalation. Ford can easily de-escalate this tension, and he has opted instead to just sit on his hands and say, well, I'm going to wait until President Trump. Remember, he was waiting until President Trump called him to talk about it, because he didn't want to initiate that first call, because we're playing like high school drama.
Yeah.
We went on our
playing
first
hard
date
to get.
is he going to call me? I don't know. I can't call him first.
Yeah.
This is just, and these are people's lives and livelihoods hanging in the midst. And instead of dealing with this in a fiscally responsible way, because Doug Ford is a progressive conservative only in name. Well, he's progressive conservative. He's only conservative in name. He is not fiscally responsible. And this is just reminiscent of the COVID era handouts that are going to contribute to even more inflation and even higher taxation. So I don't know where people and regular Ontarians think this is going to go, but I don't see this as being any sort of economic strong point.
No, it doesn't make any sense. Like we are 90 days into the Trump administration. It's not like Trump didn't campaign on this. They knew he won the election back in November. They had 2 months after that to get their ducks in a row to try to figure out, like, hey, what is it that the administration wants from us, even though they've been telling you since, I don't know, the entire campaign. We're 90 days after Trump being sworn in, and the best these people have come up with is, we're going to give you money if you end up unemployed. How about try to save the jobs? Like, did anybody even consider that? Like, instead of just running their mouths and accelerating the temperature with the Trump administration. So just dial it down a little bit, guys, because as you say, this is people's livelihoods. These are families. Every single one of those jobs is a family. And I wish they sort of thought about it that way instead of just swinging their wieners around like Mark Carney. We're going to fight the Americans. Or are you really going to fight the Americans? Really?
With what?
The tariffs. With what, by the way? You haven't even won an election yet. Now, before I was going to move on to the chats and the ad read, but I'll leave that while we're on this topic, because Danielle Smith actually takes phone calls from the people. By the way, she has like it's called Your Province, and I think it's weekly, and you can call in and talk to the premier. And somebody texted in to ask her, like, please explain the tariffs. And this is a great way of explaining it. And I wish and this is what she explained to the Americans, which is why the Republican base is sort of shifting away from tariffs and sort of moving back towards free trade. So let's hear from our premier.
Dawn has texted in on the chat line, said, can you explain who takes the tariff? For example, U.S. tariff to Canada, Canada tariff to the U.S. Does the vendor get their asking price?
So what happens, and I can just tell you from what I'm working on with JBS right now, because they're a big a producer in my riding, obviously, major abattoir, but they also have cross-border cattle movements, cross-border packaged beef movements. So they got hit both ways. So when they were sending shipments down to the U.S. during those 3 days the tariffs were on, there's a customs broker there who keeps track of everything that they do, and then they send them a bill and say, you have to pay this within 6 days. And those dollars go to the U.S. government. Coming back the other way, they've ordered equipment and supplies so that they can develop a patty plant so that they can supply Wendy's with all of their hamburger patties. Those shipments are now coming across the border, and it's the Canadian customs that are doing the same thing. They're adding the tax to them, and those dollars are going to Ottawa. And if they continue ordering the product, it's going to be about another $400,000 that goes to Ottawa. So yeah, tariffs are terrible. They hit you coming and going. They're terrible for companies like I just described, but anytime you hear of an American tariff, it is the American government receiving those money. When you hear of a Canadian counter tariff being applied, it's Ottawa receiving those dollars.
Which is why we should all be against the tariffs, even counter tariffs, because all it does is line Ottawa's pocket while you get poor. While you pay more for everything, the government gets richer. Of course, they're real excited. So, we're going to get rid of the consumer carbon tax. Yeah, of course, the money is going to be made up in tariffs now.
And just proves that they could have done that all along, and they waited until they're in an election to go ahead and do that.
Yep. And we're fighting the Americans. How? By making me poorer? Like, by making my Wendy's burger cost more money? Thank you for really taking it to the Americans while I have to pay $6 for my junior bacon cheeseburger.
Well, everyone's Team Canada, so I guess we're just going to have to take one for the team, aren't we?
Right. It's my civic duty to become more poor to help fight the Liberals' battle against Donald Trump so that Mark Carney can get elected.
Want to stay on top of the latest current events, but don't trust the mainstream media to help you do that? Then check out our daily live stream coverage of the latest news and totally unscripted at rebelnews.com/roundup.